Hey, what's going on, everybody? Live Night Owl, NFFC Online Championship 12-teamer. We are here representing FTNFantasy.com. I am Vlad Sedler, and this is the infamous Nelson Sousa. You probably see him on your YouTube channels all week long because the man is drafting every single night, crushing these drafts, going for the 250 grand prize. What's going on, Nelson? How's your Friday night besides football?
Is it Friday night? It's Saturday night, right?
It's Friday. It's Friday.
No,
Saturday. It's
no.
Saturday. Yes,
That,
it's Saturday.
listen, man. These days are they're running together, man.
Yeah.
I had to question myself whether it was Friday or Saturday, but yeah, going pretty good. Just trying to get a second wind right now. Been doing did a couple of drafts earlier today, and now we got this midnight one to do, so that should be fun.
Yeah, I mean, still a relatively normal time for me here on the West Coast. I'm in Los Angeles, so it's about to be 9 o'clock. It's perfect time. Kids are asleep, and got my prep sheet going, and yeah, man, everything's good, ready to go. And yeah, so tonight we are drafting. For those that aren't familiar with the format, NFFC, the National Fantasy Football Championship. These are 12-team football drafts with a couple of specific things with it, specifically the third round reversal. So after the second round, the draft flips. And so the way it lines up is whoever is picking first and then 24th, they then get the last pick in the third round. So that's 36. But then the first pick in the fourth round, 37. So that's what that looks like. And then, of course, there's the Kentucky Derby style in terms of setting your draft position, your preferences. And so you can set them once the draft fills. We set our preferences 1 through 12, however we want them, based on what we are looking for specifically on the draft board that day, how we want to start. And I guess, Nelson, you set your KDS to 12 first in this one. You got the first choice in our draft, and you got the 12 spot. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so I've been setting my preference where I go one pick, the one hole, and then I go to the back end. And I've been getting that first preference of the number one pick. And I was looking at my player shares the other day, and I had noticed that I've got quite a bit of Jefferson, which is abnormal, since he pretty much is kind of like the consensus, number one pick right now. I needed to change it up, so I went ahead and just went 12 through 1 this time around for tonight.
Sounds good. I'm over in the 8 hole. We've got a nice matchup. We'll have the draft board up for the draft. It's going to get started in about 6 minutes, so 11:55 on the East Coast time, and so you can follow along. We'll go pick by pick. We'll discuss the board. You can go ahead and pop in your comments and questions in the channel. Feel free. Actually, first question here, Josh asks, how do you find your exposure percentage on NFFC?
So you go into your league homepage of, a league that either that you've, drafted recently, and then you go to the stats drop down, and it has player shares.
That's it. That's how you find it. Player shares are there for all your teams, and you can set it up specifically for whatever challenge you're in. So if you want to just see your RotoWire Online Championship shares, you can do that, or your prime times. We're about to be embarking on prime time season. Those are the massive $1,750 entry, same format as the OCs. It's basically just the big leagues with that. So that's always fun. I know, Nelson, you usually have a lot of entries in those. You always seem to do well in those. And for me, it's really tough for me to be able to find a league in a prime time. I usually do a few of those myself that you are not in. So I specifically do seek those out. So it's the sharp move, to be honest, because yes, I love to go head to head against the best of the best. I want to beat the best of the best, but you also have to be smart. We've got a lot of money at stake at this. And so if there's any way you can avoid sharp people, especially those that you sometimes share a mind with things and don't have to battle in the draft room and then during with Fab during the season, I think it's helpful. But there really are no like weak leagues, I think, in the prime time.
Are you going to Vegas?
I'm not going to be going to Vegas, okay. Unfortunately. Yeah.
I was going to say if if you were, then live draft in Vegas, you will not find me.
Okay. Maybe that's a
I'm not
reason.
going. I'm not able to go either. Just busy time of the year for me.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Get the family.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a little bit of a little sneak trick from the baseball people. Some NFBC people that can't make it to Vegas, they usually draft in leagues that are not. Basically, when all the Sharks go to Las Vegas, they are doing online drafts usually
Online
during
drafts.
those times.
Yeah.
Just to avoid them, which is pretty smart. So we've got about 3 minutes here. Pull up the draft board here in a second. 20 rounds. Got to fill a team kicker spot. Got to fill a defense. What have you been doing lately because we won't actually be here for the entire 20 rounds. We'll probably hang out for about an hour or so. But how have you been attacking the back end? Are you usually grabbing one of the elite defensive special teams earlier, or are you waiting there? And then are you sort of like kind of going for like the high upside picks, the backup running backs with upside? What have you been doing there?
So it's kind of funny because I think people that are listening in today are going to make fun of me because I used to mock these people, but I like to draft I take a defense early. So I'm not one of those guys that waits till the last round and then streams all year long. And the reason for that is because, well, one, I'm usually upwards of 100 plus teams in fantasy football. And I had found that my Wednesdays and Saturday nights were starting to become very cumbersome in trying to, spending time trying to stream a defense. And then the other thing is I charted I started this a few years ago, but I charted a few years ago that the fab that I was spending on streaming defenses started to add up. It was like a good, $200-300 that I was spending just on a defense all year long. And I said, man, if I just go and just take one of the perceived or projected top defenses, and I just say set it and forget it, and for the most part, I'm going to save myself a ton of fab that I can use, like $200-300 I can fire on a possible like wide receiver or running back that emerges, right? So that's one of the things that I do now. So Eagles defense, 49ers defense, Cowboys, I'm that guy. I'm the guy in your league that is going to take them early and get mocked.
Yeah, I'm all for it. Specifically in this format, I mean, we won't all have the brilliance of that 2019, and I do have to pat myself on the back on that one. It was the Patriots, if you recall. Was it 2019? I forgot. It was the year that they just had that legendary season, or like averaging 18 fantasy points per game. It was incredible. There was just something kind of early on in the draft season where I looked and was like, okay, outside of, I think it was week 1, from like week 2 to 10, they had the most amazing schedule I've ever seen in my life. And that's exactly what ended up happening. They just crushed. But that's very rare. Really not going to get that. So we're underway here. We've got the draft board going, and first pick on the board. A little bit different than what we're used to here. Jamar Chase at number 1. The guy's not afraid of Joe Burrow possibly missing the early part of the season. Do you think Joe Burrow is going to miss time?
So I listened to that interview with Jamar Chase when he was talking about it, and it's one of those things. It's either he's just talking and kind of saying, hey, I just want my quarterback back healthy when it's like the money schedule when it really counts, or he was being genuine and saying Burrow's effed up and it's going to be some time before he gets back. So it makes you wonder if it's more of like a grade 2 type of strain, which that can be tricky even going into the season, as far as re-aggravating it. I don't tend to I don't draft like that. So my mentality is, I want to get a discount on Burrow because, hey, he is injured and hopefully he drops. But no, I don't really pay too much attention. Even if he
Okay.
misses the first couple of weeks of the season, if I'm getting a discount on Burrow or Chase, then I want to do that and I'll make it work the first couple of weeks.
All right, so I'm on the clock here. I've got the
Go
8
for it.
pick. I did tell you before the draft, I had a feeling that one of Kelsey or Cup are going to fall to me at pick 8.
Yeah.
This is my third
I,
OC. I did want to grab,
I
I'm
told you
sorry?
Robinson. I told you
Yeah.
Robinson's moved up.
Yeah, Bijan's moving up. So I've got 20 seconds here, man. So I've only done 2 OC drafts, both from the 4 pick. I got McCaffrey in one, I got Cup in another, and man, so I'm looking here at either Eckler or Cup, but I think I'm going to grab Cooper Cup. I'm just going to do it again. Don't care about player shares. Trying not to think about my previous teams. I feel like that's a good deal there at 8. I feel as long as he's healthy, he's going to be a top 3 receiver, and he's a beast. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I mean that's a good spot to get him at. I'm probably somewhere in that range from like 8, 9 to 12 range on Cooper Cup. There's definitely some other players that um, I've moved ahead of him right now and want to get more of a discount. Coming off an injury, gets re-injured, hammy. The good news is it happened really early in the preseason in camp, so he's got time to heal. But you never want these type of hamstring type of injuries for your players.
Yeah, you don't want to start behind the 8 ball. And what's interesting? So I'm sure, obviously you know this, but man, the guy was a beast. So I understand he only played about half the season. I think it was like 8 or 9 games, but he was still like the wide receiver 20 or 21 overall in this format or in PPR formats. Despite that, and he was basically the points per game leader. I don't know if had he played the full season, if he still would have maintained that. I'm pretty sure he would have been top 3. But yeah, it's really just all about the health for him. I think still problems with that offensive line. So you took your pick there on the turn. So talk to us about your combo there.
I have a lot of AJ Brown. I was actually secretly hoping that the guy at 11 would pass on Diggs, just so I could have a different combination. But I'm actually I'm pretty sure I don't have Brown with CD Lamb. So I'll have to look back at my teams. But yeah, I have a lot of AJ Brown, so I gotta cool it on him a little bit here and start taking some different guys.
That's fine. I think that's one guy we don't have to worry. I don't think too much about cooling on. I'm a little bummed. Was hoping actually Devontae Adams would fall to me at 17. I think we've been seeing it here and there, but yeah, that would have been a nice little gift. CeeDee Lamb, talk to me about with Michael Gallup and Brandon Cooks there in the mix now, as far as his sort of your expectations for end of the season points and just like those types of ceiling games he had last season in comparison to what we might see this year.
Sure. And you're on the clock, by the way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's 2 schools of thought with it. One, Brandon Cooks comes in. It's now more target competition for him. The OC, Kellen Moore, left. It's Schottenheimer there. I've not been impressed with Schottenheimer to this point when he's been an offensive coordinator. So that part worries me. On the positive side of things, he's in a really good offense. He is the number 1 guy. Him and Dak have a good rapport. To end last year, he put up some big games, and I'd probably say that the 2 cancel each other out.
Okay, fair. Oops, wrong layout there. What am I looking for? There it is. All right, yeah, I'm usually not behind the scenes clicking, but it's late night.
Yeah.
And but thanks, shout out to Quan for hooking everything up for us up on the producer side. So yeah, so I went with Tony Pollard there with my second round pick. Was strongly considering a certain wide receiver on Miami, which some might say it was probably the right pick. The way I'm kind of looking at the board and the options in the next few rounds, I might be looking to grab a quarterback at some point, get some more receivers, and I am not a huge fan of just like waiting for my RB1. I'd rather grab them early. I do know sort of the concerns there. If someone kind of big comes in there, they still haven't signed anyone. It's still Pollard. Then it's like Malik Davis, Deuce Vaughn, but it was my only, I'm also a big baseball guy. My one football tweet in like a 4-month span was literally about Tony Pollard and returning first round value. And I don't care, kind of what anything's been saying, lately it's like the hype on Pollard. Then people will be down on him, this and that. He was not going to score so many touchdowns from so far out, this and that. Hey, not going to get that many touches. He's a little guy. I don't care. He's a beast. Wanted to lock in my second, my first running back there, and then we'll just work with it from there.
So here's my prediction. I think Pollard right now is going like second round, late second round. Sometimes you even see him sneak into the third round of drafts, but for the most part right now, he's been second round. My prediction is if they don't go signing any substantial veteran running back, I think when Vegas rolls around in kind of like the final 2 weeks here, the home stretch before the season, I think Pollard is going to be a first round pick.
Yep. That was basically my tweet at the end of last season, is that Pollard is going to be a first round value guy. At least we'll see. It's a nice offense. The one thing that that soured me a little bit was, and I know he was kind of coming off the injury, but like Dak just did not look very good last season. It's just not the same Dak that I was so used to. So I'm hoping he bounces back. I don't know.
Yeah. No, there was definitely those games, watching them. It's like, Dak, what are you doing, man? So, but again, he's got weapons, and Pollard is just so good that I don't think there's going to be an issue there.
All right. So you're on the clock, right?
Now,
we just flipped it.
Yep.
Yep. And this is the benefit of having the 12th pick in the NFFC online championships. You got the 12th pick, the 13th, and then you get the 25th. So 3 picks in the top 25. If your sort of player pool, your tier drop off kind of happens to fall past that top 25 a little bit, you can get 3 of the guys that you really love. I know you like a few guys in this range. I think one of them's gone. A certain wide receiver down south is not available, so I think you're looking at something else here. But there you go, painting yellow, 3 in a row. T. Higgins, beast of a man when he's healthy, and we really hate to play the game of like, what if this guy's injured, but it's just something we can't avoid in fantasy, right? But I think it's quite clear that if something was to happen to Jamar Chase, and we saw those games when Chase was out, sidelined or whatnot, what T. Higgins is capable of, definitely top 3 overall wide receiver upside.
What's interesting? Another thing I wanted to comment on is, so like Team 7, I was saying this to a couple of people on one of the live streams that I haven't seen many Kelsey Mahomes teams, because Kelsey's been kind of like a consensus top 5 pick.
Yep.
And then Mahomes, his ADP is basically 1.12. So he goes right at the turn. So very rarely was I seeing that. I want to say now in the past like week and a half, I've seen that like almost every draft now. Now, like it's like constant where you can get Kelsey with Mahomes, because Kelsey is now, for whatever reason, a couple other guys have been pushed up, like Bijan and Amon-Ra, St. Brown have moved up, and Kelsey has moved down just a little bit, and it's enough where like Mahomes like makes it to that team.
Yes, and then okay, wait. Oh shoot, I'm up. I got 36 seconds. Let's see. Wideouts. Going to take a quick look. I do not have a quarterback plan here. I am going to pass on the tight end. I know that's an option there. Baltimore's guy. I'm going to pass. I'm going to grab another wide receiver between 2 guys I like very much. There's a third one. He won't be available to me at the next group. Let's see. I'm going to go with it. I'm a big fan of this offense. I'm just a big fan of this player in general. I know the hype's been kind of getting big here, but I do expect him to be the wide receiver one on this team. I think this team just blasts off. It's a good team to get exposure to. So a little Calvin Ridley for me, my first share.
Okay. Yeah. That's about where he's been going in drafts lately.
And so we are. I'm actually looking at ADP. I have it set for from the beginning of August. So it's just the last 5 days of drafts. But we have a nice set there of 17 drafts that we're looking at. So we'll refer to ADP from there. Bijan Robinson has an ADP of 6. It used to be 11. I think just 2 weeks ago. Now it's 6 over the last week with a min pick of 2. So min pick of 2, max pick of 11. So Bijan's been moving up. I think I saw Bijan Robinson drafted in one of your leagues, like end of the second or like mid-second or something just insane. Do you recall? Was that your league?
No, I don't think so, because the only way he went late second round is if I was in the one hole, because there's no shot that with him in the second round that I wouldn't have drafted him.
Okay, that makes sense. So it wasn't your league. You can't beat them all. You can't beat them all.
Yeah, no, can't.
Yeah. And then do you have a lot of exposure to those second round quarterbacks? Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen. Because that's the one thing I wanted to mention was getting that Kelsey Mahomes combo. Obviously, it's fantastic, but it really does hamstring you, right? For just you don't have any running backs or wide receivers through the first 2 picks.
Yeah. You have to, once you do that and you set up that stack, you have to come to grips with you're going to have to punt a position, and you're going to have a position that's just going to be weak, and you have to know how to draft it and how to construct that team, because you can really mangle it if you don't know how to navigate the draft.
And then on those quarterbacks, a lot of any exposure to those second round guys. Like, what does it take for you to take one of those guys?
I would probably say that it's right at the tier of like Garrett Wilson, where I start considering one of those quarterbacks. But it's dependent. Like if I go AJ Brown and I'm just in the mood where, like, I have enough AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts stacks right now, and I'm happy with the way the teams look. But if I want to do that, I just push the button and I go, I could have done that just tonight, where I could have just gone Brown and Hurts and been totally fine passing on CD, Adams, and Garrett Wilson. But I would probably say if like I'm in the middle of the second round, like Waddle's a consideration, but I'm right there where like, okay, let's switch my thoughts to Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Mahomes type of situation. I'm flexible, but it for different people, they don't tend to like drafting quarterback early. And I used to be one of those guys, and it's just not the case this year for me. For me, I'm making a effort to take one of those elite quarterbacks, because I feel like it's important for me to get an edge at that position, because I think that I can do a good enough job in finding whether it's my RB2 or my wide receiver 3 or my flex later in the draft or in on waivers, that I can figure that out. But I don't want to be sitting there taking like Anthony Richardson with like Aaron Rodgers or something like that combo, and hoping that I can kind of keep up with like the Jalen Hurts or Mahomes, team. Because when you look at the scoring here at NFFC with 6 points a touchdown, and you look at those elite quarterbacks and what they scored compared to kind of like that second tier of quarterbacks, it was a big difference. There was an edge last year to be had.
By the way, and I guess I'm going to kind of out myself here for possibly losing out on a future pick in a later round, but man, I think if people have like Brock Purdy listed as, beyond their QB 20, you got to redo your rankings, man. Like that, I think that's just it's just insane. I mean, this is one of the dudes that in this offense, the quarterback, this guy, he's healthy. He's going to be averaging over 25 points per game easy in this format. You're going to take Anthony Richardson around 100, 120 overall with Purdy available at 200. To me, it makes no sense.
It's so funny that you say that, and we didn't set this up. We haven't talked about this.
Yeah.
But I was literally doing drafts today, and I was looking at my rankings. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I'm like, why do I have Brock Purdy where I have him ranked, which is really low? And I'm like, McCaffrey, Debo, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. Look where those guys get drafted. Why is Brock Purdy like a forgotten guy, barely gets drafted in these drafts? It doesn't make sense. Brock Purdy should be like a top 12 quarterback. If those guys are going to be able to deliver monster seasons and deliver on their ADP, which that tells me what's going to happen is a couple of those guys are going to disappoint is what's going to happen, because Brock Purdy is not, Peyton Manning or Patrick Mahomes. So you're going to be disappointed with a couple of those players because they're just getting taken too high. All of those guys have
something's got to give.
Yes, something's got to give. But I agree with you that, listen, the common denominator is Purdy with these guys, and he's got to be going higher.
Yeah, I think so. So we'll fight. We'll fight for him later as our backup. I'm going to grab my first quarterback here. I did want to get a little bit of Justin Herbert. I know you were off that offense last year, and that was a good call. So, especially, with Herbert, I think it was like 100 less fantasy points than he scored the previous season. Obviously, 2021 was massive for him. But I'm back on the Herbert train.
Fields.
But I took Fields, because Herbert's gone. But
yeah.
But just the rushing upside. I understand he's probably, maybe if he doesn't have as many of those long runs this year, doesn't run for 1,100 plus yards or whatever. Again, it's going to balance out a little bit with more touchdowns. I think actually he scored more fantasy points in this format as a rusher than a quarterback. So you get a little DJ Moore in there in the mix. You get a little bit more rapport with Cole Kmet. Darnell Mooney's healthy. You got the running backs there to balance things out. So I kind of I really like Justin Fields where he's going. I'll let you make your pick first, and you can talk about it.
Let's see here. What do I want to do? There's 3 players that I want, and I only have 2 picks.
Yeah, that's all. That's always the problem.
How do I want to build this team?
And then when I did take that Fields pick, there were a couple of. That's one. That was my alternative pick. That's the guy I would have gone. So DeAndre Hopkins, your 4th pick. You are now continuing to paint the board yellow 4 in a row. Obviously, you're not scared. There's nothing to be scared of, but you're pretty set there with those 4. That's good. I like it. One more for you. And then I'm gonna make a prediction that you are not going yellow here again. Although it is possible, but it just doesn't seem like your style. It would be like, because you're not trying. I mean, you're trying to win $250,000. You're not trying to show off for a live stream. People like to color coordinate sometimes their draft board. Oh, let me draft 4 greens in a row, 4 blues.
No, I was just checking my player shares, and I'm going to take this guy for only the 2nd time so far this draft season.
All right. Yes. I loved, we talked a lot about him last year, and this time last year we were drafting together, and both big ETN fans, I remember. And this year, I think just things have changed a little bit. We saw him in action. Just getting Tank Bigsby, I think they're in the mix, and the fact that there are just so many guys that can score, I think makes it a little bit difficult. I think he can earn value there. I don't think that, and maybe you probably agree with me, he's not like one of those guys that's going to probably completely smash ADP and end up as a 1st-round value.
No, I mean, he's got the talent to do it, but if it holds where Bigsby looks like he's going to take a little bit of the passing down work from ETN, and looking at how they used him last year, he's not going to smash, but he could still be real solid. And,
Mhm.
In the fifth round as my RB1, I'm totally fine with it. But like, yeah, he's not a home run pick,
Yep.
probably.
All right, so Chris Godwin off the board. The whole Tampa thing has been balancing out a little bit more in terms of everybody was just completely off. To me, it seemed like the entire Tampa offense, all those guys were just kind of going way later, getting no respect. And I understand Brady retires and whatnot, but got Baker Mayfield there, but it's still too low. Godwin is just a playmaker. He's gonna get his 140 plus targets and catch 90 plus balls. He's the man. Doesn't matter who's really throwing it to him. So I like that pick. I don't know, maybe a little too high. I mean, there are other receivers I like more than him.
Now, you're on the clock, right?
I do. I like to really push
So
it.
you're
Thank you.
oh, listen, you're a professional, done this before, but I
But I've
always
missed
want to.
picks. Oh, I have.
I'm just looking out for you at the same time.
I
I mean, we're competing against each other, so I'll let you talk and like auto pick and be totally fine with it. But
oh my god, I got that.
I wanted to give you a heads up.
Yeah, I was between two receivers there. I was kind of like talking while playing and while thinking, I guess.
Yeah.
A couple wideouts I really love there. Both averaged right around the same amount of fantasy points last year. I won't say the other guy quite yet. I want to see if he gets picked first. Brandon Ayuk's one of the few guys I've been talking about this offseason, and I kind of put it in that whole context of like, man, imagine him like on the Chiefs or somewhere else. I think a lot of people know the talent that Brandon, how talented he is, his hands, his route running, his nose for the end zone, but just that offense that's just so well balanced. It has McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, it's Kittle. It's really hard to sort of maximize your upside, like really get a lot of profit. He's going to have some of those like quiet games. I don't know, but overall, I really like him. I hope he smashes. I'd love to see him on the Chiefs or something like that.
Yeah. Now to bring up when you were talking about Brandon Ayuk and before that, you were talking about Godwin and Evans and that Tampa offense. It's funny because I was talking with Two Gun, Michael Cohen, who's a big DFS player, and he does content, over at FTN with us. And it's interesting. Like we were talking about that like nobody's talking about Tampa. The last couple of years, it was all about we need Godwin, we need Evans, we need Brady. You wanted Fournette, you wanted a piece of that offense. Brady retires, and it's like, okay, that's it. No one's respecting Baker. No one thinks Kyle Trask can, that he's garbage. But I don't know. Like you go and look at the Vegas lines, and like Vegas doesn't think like they're going to be completely trash. So it's interesting. They go at a discount, and he's right. Tampa might surprise people. Baker at the end of last year with the Rams. Think about it. They brought him in. He had to learn a new offense on the fly. No Cooper Kupp, and I remember watching those games and saying, what is going on here? Like, how are the Rams scoring points right now with freaking Baker Mayfield and like Ben Skoranek is like the number one wideout?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember it well. That was and it was a Monday night game, I think, because I went it was a low percentage play in DFS to use him as a captain in a showdown. So I remember that. Can I make the board bigger? I don't know. I could pop it up like this for a little bit. Yeah, I think that works. I think that's better. Yeah, someone asked if I can make the board bigger. Yeah, so one thing I was going to say about Mike Evans. So I did post this in an article and actually on Twitter as well. 35% of his fantasy points last season came in 2 games. And I know he was instrumental. Maybe instrumental is not the right word for a negative thing, but he was one of the reasons why you were right there. You were going to win the overall in the was it primetime or the online championship? I don't know why I'm blanking. Last year. He screwed you over, right?
Prime time.
Yeah, he screwed you over last year, right?
He did. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's still like, so I remember watching games so closely with Evans and played him a lot in DFS. It's like everything was just kind of out of sync for Tampa Bay, for Tampa last year. It's like Brady, throwing that deep bomb, one that Evans usually catches, the 40-yarder just right out of his fingertips. There's like so much money lost there with Mike Evans last year. And the
Yeah.
man has never had a season under 1,000 yards. I understand he's on the wrong side of 30 and it's not the same guy, but his like average stat line over the course of his career is amazing. Incredible. Something like 76 catches, 1150 yards, 8 touchdowns per season, every season, and usually, fairly healthy. So I'm not saying like he's amazing, but this is a guy that was going in like a third round just last season, third, fourth round. Now he's going in the 80s. So something's got to give. It's not like I love Mike Evans, but then again, I don't know if he's worth that low of a pick.
Yeah. Again, people look at it as like that. They're not confident in that offense, but again, it's Mike Evans, it's Godwin, and they're still talented guys, and I think they'll be just fine. I think it's one of those things people are underestimating it a little bit, and Evans is getting up there in age, and he kind of, to his standards, it seemed like he had like a terrible year. And then, of course, he picks, week 17 to have, a monster week, which, hurt my chances of winning an overall title. But, and that padded his stats too. So it made it look a lot better than what it was. It definitely was a struggle for him last year.
I want to ask you about a couple of builds here. The first one is Team 4. So you've got Tyreek Hill, Josh Allen, Amari Cooper, and then you've got the 2 guys coming off injury. I do feel about them a little differently, Breece Hall and Javonte Williams, or at least I felt differently about them when there was a huge price gap. And for me, I have been drafting a lot of Javonte Williams in best ball, like in the 80s and 90s, NFFC in like the 70s. And now the price has gone up because he's, in contact, he's going to play. I mean, sure, anything can happen and get hurt. Breece Hall, I wasn't a fan of because usually he was going in the third round. I think there is a point in which I would consider him and take him. But how do you feel about not one, but both of those guys as your first 2 running backs?
I'm not feeling it, to be honest with you. I mean, I haven't really, been quiet about it as far as what my opinion of them is this year. Both talented guys. So my opinion is they're very talented and I like them, but coming off that injury, I'm just not interested in banking on them, especially to start the season. So it's one of those things like I need to get a discount on them, and it's got to be like the price is right. It's got to be the right draft, and I'll take a chance on them. Like Breece was locked in to the third round. He's now fallen a little bit, and I would consider him at a certain spot in the draft. But Javonte is like moved way up because you get one camp report that he should be ready to go, and now Sean Payton's coming out saying, what is it, by like the second preseason game he'll be playing and everything. So they're moving him way up, and it basically all's forgotten. Everything's forgotten that they signed Samaje Perine, and now Perine, who is kind of like that sneaky pick later in the draft, right after like the 10th round, you would take a Perine, and you could get out of the gates and running the first couple of weeks of the season, assuming like Javonte was going to miss time, and now it's just like, who cares about Perine, and it's all Javonte, and he's just steaming up the board. I have no interest.
So this is really funny, and I'm actually kind of happy about it. So I was most likely going to take a running back 2 in this spot, and I know you're about to be on the clock, but when we were on the last turn, when I took Ayuk, my other option there was Mike Williams. That's who I was looking at. So the fact that Williams came back to me a full turn later is pretty nice. And that's actually his max pick over the last week and a half, over like 30 drafts, ADP in the 50s. So getting him at 68, I'm pretty happy about that. And just, hey, maybe he does start to work little bit more out of the slot. I know it's kind of Keenan Allen roams, but just kind of more intermediate routes, and doesn't always have to go for the big home run. So maybe after your picks here, say something about Mike Williams before these two picks. That's just an interesting offense in general for me.
I've always been a huge fan of Mike Williams, and the guy he always figures out a way to get banged up. It just he starts off on fire, and then it's like he's hurt. So I do like him this year. At least he's going at a discount, because last year I want to say him and Keenan were both kind of being taken around the same area.
You had to fight for them at even at some points at the end of the second, early third, and with Allen Robinson, but we won't even go there. There was a time around this time last year when, we went on the Allen Robinson train again. Not everyone, but some. So Nelson on the clock with his second pick here. One of the all-time money leaders, to me, the best pound for pound fantasy football player there is. I think a few people in your realm, I think, that are some of the best. I consider myself pretty damn good. I consider myself one of the best, but I consider you and that realm even better. So you've been walking the walk, talking the talk. So always learn a lot from you. You didn't just take. Did you just take my boy? Damn. That's what I was looking at there. I was looking at James Cook. It's just, just buy into those offenses. Buffalo, Kansas City, even some of the rising ones that we think are at least ones that bounce back. Denver, New Orleans, just load up on players there. Okay, so I'm up, about to grab my second pick, or my seventh round pick.
Some good running backs there available.
Yeah, I've just got a slam dunk lock here. I would have even considered him in the last round. I don't care what the exact role is. I'm just gonna, talking about exactly what we were talking about, just getting good players on the best offenses. DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
All right. The other team I wanted to ask you about, it is where was it? Well, the Kelsey Mahomes team. So the Kelsey Mahomes team ended up going with 3 straight running backs. If you did the Kelsey Mahomes build, I figure you probably would be jumping into the wide receivers pretty shortly thereafter, right?
Yeah, that would be my preference, is to go Kelsey Mahomes and then get at least 2 to 3 wide receivers that I feel comfortable playing on a weekly basis, that should have projected consistent roles on their offense week to week, and then worry about my RB1, or even you can take one of those running backs there, but I got to take receiver there at that point, because now you're getting into Lockett as your number 1, Marquise Brown on a terrible offense as your number 2. Marquise is nice as your number 4, your flex, on a terrible offense, but now you're counting on him as your number 2, and you're going to need some wide receivers that you take later to pan out. And I just don't. I feel like when I've built those teams, I don't like, or I've seen teams built this way, I just don't think the team's explosive enough. Najee should get a decent workload, but it's kind of he's whatever. And Mixon should get a decent workload on a good offense, but he's whatever.
Super inefficient, or at least last season, yeah.
Yeah, these guys are I don't know. I look at it as push that RB2 spot back, and if he had gone Hopkins and then come around with DJ Moore or Christian Kirk, I would have liked that a lot better. And then you have Lockett as your number 3 wide receiver, and then if you wanted to take a running back and take you know, Connor or J.K. Dobbins as your RB2, that that's fine. But like at least your wide receivers, because again, in this format, you have to start three wide receivers,
Hmm.
and like you got to get good wide receiver play. If you're getting guys that are just going to be like hit and miss week to week, those three running backs that you decided to take real early, they have to be the nuts. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they
Yeah.
have to be like top 8 running backs basically to carry your team. Otherwise, the team's just going to be kind of like middle of the pack.
By the way, Team One is kind of an interesting build. So I think they pretty much just set the minimum pick on Kirk Cousins, but you didn't have Justin Jefferson first, so that would have been nice. So so I don't quite understand that. Maybe that wasn't planned out, but that's also kind of a unique team. So you start off with a chase. You kind of get the boring but steady Derrick Henry's on the decline, and then it gets hot, right? Like Judy is a helium guy right now, a riser. I'm a big Judy fan. Jahmyr Gibbs has been just creeping. He could be a second rounder really soon, I think. Darren Waller is he's the talk of tight end town over the last few days, and just basically how good he's been looking in camp and connecting with
Mhm.
Daniel, Addison, Sky Moore. So yeah, that's another interesting build there. I don't know if I love it, but it's interesting.
I like the players on the team. Like that turn is about as good as you can get as far as like Judy and Gibbs.
Yeah.
I want to say if I had built that team the way he did, I got to be honest. I might have tried to get creative and taken like Higgins and then come around with Burrow and just
Mm-hmm.
have a Bengals stack.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Eh, eh,
And but like I can't blame the picks. Like he's taking like good players, explosive players that I like. But I don't understand the Cousins pick. Like why reach for him uh there? And
Maybe he's
if
a
like
cousin's cousin. Who knows?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I look at it as if quarterback was that important to you, like why not just take Burrow and
Mm-hmm.
stack him with Chase at that point?
All right, so I'm on the clock here. Gonna look and see. So I'm not gonna take a tight end here. I'm not pushing any of these Njokus and Freermuths of the world. I did like your Kyle Pitts pick. I definitely would have considered him there. Let's see here. I got my quarterback. I'm not worried about that right now. Running backs are running kind of thin. I don't think I have anyone. Yeah, I don't really have anyone in this range that I absolutely must have. And I don't necessarily want to pound the Swift Penny combo. Although that might be smart, but I don't need to do it right here, right now. So I think I'm going to take a wide out, and I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to go with the kid, Zay Flowers.
Yeah,
But
that's a good pick.
So I don't know if it'll come to fruition this year. We'll see. Rashad Bateman's always a little banged up. He's supposed to be actually back soon, so we'll see, and hopefully that sticks around. I think we would all love to see just like a smash Rashad Bateman year. Obviously, the talent
Yeah.
is there. Odell Beckham, it would be nice to see him have a little bit of rebound. We'd like to see J.K. Dobbins actually practice and get in there and
Well,
handle his little contract
Flowers
thing.
is the guy with the juice, man, on that team, and they're going to be more pass heavy than they have in years past. So I like him.
I have a good friend, Russ Prentice, who some of you maybe know, but he used to do some work for FTN. He's like, fantasy hockey, right? FSTA right over the air, or whatever. He knows his football. He's won some like overall championship stuff. Had something that stuck in my head and probably shouldn't be like a reason alone to really be in on a guy, but he thinks that like Zay Flowers is like the next Tyreek, for whatever that means. I don't know if he's that fast, but yeah, I don't know what you think of that statement. Well, I'll make you make your pick first.
Sure. All right. Let me see here. What do I want to do?
2 picks here. Oh yeah, that's hold on. Good point by Jay there. So yeah, I guess maybe he got Jordan Addison, and maybe he knows something. Justin Jefferson busted for pet PEDs, or I don't know, something like that, and says Addison's the guy, so he's stacked with Cousins. So we'll see. But got Nelson on the clock here. He started off with the 4 wide receivers coming in hot on the yellow stickers. And then, it's always a nice build. I always like the way you put these things together. Finally got your quarterback, Dak Prescott, the guy we were talking shit about earlier. But, it's got to be better than last year. He's got all these weapons. Like, you just imagine, like, just a full season of Brandon Cooks. I know he's on the wrong side. That's what you're doing. Get a little stacks going. Stack attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cooks, that was the other option. So I was like between Cooks, a running back, and Zay Flowers when I took him. Oh, yeah. Tell me what you think about that Zay comment. Is that overkill?
I don't want to get too, like, it seems a little too much hype to say, like, he's the next Tyreek. I think
granted, he said this 2 months ago. He said it not just like now in camp.
Gotcha. I like the call out 2 months ago, saying that he's the next Tyreek. We have to see it, but like Tyreek was kind of like this unknown guy when he came into the league, and then they started using him and being creative. And Zay, I will say, like, I watched a lot of Boston College games, and I remember, like, even like my kid, my son would be like, he's like, Dad, this kid's legit. And like, he had that it factor, and I could see it, so I don't want to pump him up too much, but he reminds me, it could be like Tyreek, and they could use him like that, but like, he just reminds me of like Deshaun Jackson. Like, I could easily see like 60 receptions for 1,000 yards and like half a dozen touchdowns. And if he does that, like, he's going to pay off where he's going.
So I have a question for you. Strategy, just kind of like strategy wise, how do you feel about, because it's a weird dynamic in this offense, right? These running backs, Penny, obviously incredibly efficient. Like when he's healthy, there are very few guys that are averaging, so many yards per carry, over the course of their careers like him. It's like Jamal Charles-esque. When he touches the ball, he just, hits it. But he's always hurt. Probably going to get some goal line work. Obviously, got Hurts there in the goal line. You got DeAndre Swift, who last year was a back end first rounder. Now you're getting him here in the 6th round. He's now in one of the best teams in football. So do you think it's wise or unwise what I did there? Just kind of pairing up both guys, and especially knowing that there's another guy lurking, Kenneth Gainwell, who is, basically working in on the 2-minute, in the 2-minute offenses. So what do you think about that pairing?
You need Gainwell to go away. You need the coaches not to like Gainwell, because unfortunately that is the thing. The coaches, they like Gainwell in that hurry up in that 2-minute offense, and that's definitely that's going to be a thorn in Swift's side. If Swift stays healthy, you could see him having a pretty good year in Philadelphia, but that hurts, because like that's where like he needs to produce, is in like being in that 2-minute offense where he can get a couple of checkdowns, and then before you know it, like, he's got himself a nice little game. With Penny, if they use him as like the early down back, the thumper, behind a great O-line, with a great offense, like, teams are not going to be able to stack the box. He could be solid, but once again, like, both those guys, you better take like Gainwell and like Boston Scott at this point also, because like at some point, like, those guys are going to miss time.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a really tough place, because there were some other running backs I was interested in, and I couldn't, like, while we were talking, really formulate. I hadn't really thought about it. Like, I've never really been in a position where I could get both. And I didn't really know if it was, even wise. I think I would feel a lot more comfortable about it if Gainwell wasn't in the mix. But then again, yes, if one of them gets hurt, you're sort of just, you just kind of know who you're starting every week. But the last thing you want to ever do is be in a position where you're kind of chasing those games every week, right? Like Penny has the big game one week, and then You've got Swift on the bench and then you switch it up and then you miss it again. You don't
Yeah.
really want to be in that situation week to week.
I mean, I'll say this, like we were at the beginning of the show, you were talking about like my team that I had an opportunity to win, the primetime main event last year. That team basically at the end of the season, I was playing McKinnon and Pacheco on that team. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it was scoring, 200 points a week. So it can be done, if you're picking two running backs, a pass catching back and a guy that's like early downs going to get goal line work on an elite offense. Yeah, you can do it and your team can score points. So I'm not going to say that it can't be done.
Yeah, and then just the same thing like with Jalen Hurts's like rushing number. Like I just don't see him like scoring so many touchdowns again. I mean, for rushing touchdowns at least. I think maybe the last year's 22 pass TDs go up a little bit, rushing touchdowns and maybe yards and attempts go down a little bit. But just have guys like this in the mix. Like it's going to be a lot of scoring spread out. But you're right. There's just some offenses you can do that. I mean, you can kind of get away, especially like later on in the season where you really need it. You can just kind of play them both and it works out. Two running backs from the same team. That is, it's the Kamara Tevin Coleman special. That was special, right? A few years ago. Was it?
Yeah.
Was that it? Yeah.
It was
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Yeah, it was Coleman and
it was Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman.
Yes. And that was the year I think Devontae Freeman was like the RB1 overall. It's like 2017, 2018, something like that.
Yep. And then we did have like Kamara and Ingram where you could have played both of those guys all year long and your team would have been totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it, it's possible like where it works out where you get the early down guy and you get the pass catching guy.
All right, so I'm on the clock here, 30 seconds. So the only problem with the penny pick there, I really, really like McKinnon still again this year. So that's the guy that I was thinking I maybe should have considered taking. And same thing with the UCLA rookie Sharbs. But no, okay. So I got 20 seconds. I got to make a quick decision. I got either a wide receiver. Oh, I already have 4 wideouts. All right, I'm just going to grab my boy here. I continue to do this. This will be my third draft, 3 of 3 on Greg Dulcich. I'm just going to get Sean Payton's Joker and just roll with it. That's my guy. This is why usually I'm not drafting early tight ends.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. When you wait at tight end, do you usually take 2? Do you take 3? And if you do take like 2, like you waited on Dulcich, right, till the 10th round, do you take them like pretty close together, or now are like you gonna wait a while?
I think it depends. I think like I probably am not taking a tight end with my next pick. There's a tight end that everybody loves that has the same bye week as him, in which case if I do that, like, I'm just going to say it might as well Laporta. Everyone loves Sam Laporta, but like they're both bye week 9. Obviously, it's not really an issue. I'm not worried about it. It's like 2 months from now, 3 months from now. I would probably either would draft one or somebody will like drop Gerald Everett or somebody like that later on. Don't have to really worry about it. But yeah, I guess it depends. I do have some other tight ends that I like that go a little bit later, so I'm not overly concerned. But I do know, there's obviously a little risk. He always also has some sort of health issues going back to his UCLA days, and then of course last season, beginning of last year. So yeah, he's not perfect. And I think from baseball, right? Like I rarely try to go in all in on players, but I had Raisel Iglesias on every team. The guy hasn't had health issues in years, and then lo and behold, right in the middle of spring training, the guy gets hurt. Just like it, that kind of thing stings when somebody you really love, you're all in on. They have injury issues, and you hope these things don't happen. But man, I mean, injury prone guys get injured. It is what it is. All right, there you are at the turn. Dalton Kincaid, tight end. Jamal Williams, running back. That's a good one. So you've got sort of two kind of receptions guys. Jamal Williams, isn't going to catch a lot of passes, but obviously he's not going to score 17 rushing touchdowns again this season or whatever it was, and it's going to get a lot of work, I think, early on. So I like that. I've been drafting a lot of Jamal Williams as well, kind of in those anywhere between 100, 125 overall. Nice picks.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. That's one thing. Like I used to. I feel like Pitts is like right on that edge of potential elite tight end. And usually when I get one of these guys, like if I get Hawkinson or Andrews or Waller, I usually just like I'll push tight end a little bit. Even with like Waller, like he tends to get banged up. So like I'll take a second, tight end because I want to have a talented guy that could get targets on a consistent basis week in and week out. But like with Pitts, I don't even like I know there's upside there, but like I have no idea what to expect from him. So I rather just take like another like potential explosive tight end.
Yep. That's smart.
I was talking to Greg about this like last night when we were doing the live stream, and basically like I used to be punt tight end back kind of guy. And I would just take like two guys towards the end of the draft and try to figure it out. And that just hasn't worked for me the last couple of years. I've had terrible tight end play. So I've reversed course here a little bit and changed that up.
All right, I got 16 seconds here.
Yeah. So what are you looking to do here?
I'm thinking about getting some exposure to KC offense. I don't feel like I don't have enough, so I'm going to take a flyer on this kid. And so maybe this is a good entry point for the conversation of what the hell is going to happen behind Travis Kelce, and obviously the running backs. Like, I mean, nobody has a crystal ball. No one can predict the future. Now you've got last year's IR guy Justin Ross is having an impressive camp. You've got old man MVS, Valdes Scantling, nobody like cares about. Kadarius Toney's now hurt. He's supposed to be the kind of the star. Now Sky Moore has been coming on, and he's been kind of taking it back. So, like, how does this room shake out to you? Like, who really stands out, or are you just as? I know you don't want to show weakness, of course. You're the man, but like, are you just as confused as so many of us?
So, I want to be able to just like segue and say into the conversation and just say like, yeah, I'm confused also, but I actually have a pretty good feeling of what this offense is going to be. And it's going to run through Kelce. I think you're going to get decent production from Sky Moore. So think like Juju of last year, right? But potential for more explosive plays. The rest is a committee. That's what it's going to be.
This is behind who you said? You said Kelce and who else?
And Sky Moore.
Okay.
And then after that, it's a committee.
Okay.
So all these guys from Kansas City are best ball type of receivers to take, because week in, week out, it's not going to be consistent. It's going to be Justin Watson one week. It's going to be Rice that gets involved the following week. It's going to be Ross that gets involved. It's just going to change up. And then you got McKinnon back there. They're talking about the Prince kid, undrafted free agent that's been catching the ball. Andy Reid might be like, you know what, this kid can make plays and we can trust him in the passing game. Let's get him a couple of snaps. We got a package for him, So that's what that offense is going to be. That's part of the reason why they traded Tyreek in the first place. They wanted to save that money. They looked at the offense and said, we don't want, two target hogs. We have Kelce. The offense runs through him, but we have Mahomes. And basically Mahomes, what he's saying is like, dude, just get me guys that know how to run routes and I'll get them the ball. Okay. It doesn't matter what their name is. They don't have to be super elite. And that's really what the offense is.
Yeah, and they don't give they don't care about your fantasy team. It's not what they're in the business for. So we got to kind of figure it out and kind of deal with the highs and lows ourselves. But Yeah, that was a tough spot for me because I actually, man, you know what? Now that I think about it, I kind of messed it up. I do like Darnell Mooney. I know he's coming off the injury. I think maybe if I wasn't live streaming, I probably would have realized and remembered that I had Fields and that Mooney was a nice
Yeah, I have
pairing.
a little stack. Yep.
So, but oh well, not the end of the world. You don't have to stack here. Here comes here come the defenses, defense special teams, and maybe they're listening to the live stream, so they beat you to the punch on the top two. And these guys go
I'm
around.
getting them.
Yeah, and these guys go actually their ADP in the OC, at least over the last couple of weeks, is in the 140s. So that is kind of the end of the 12th round, and these guys took them in the early 12th. A couple other things I wanted to mention to you was Team 10 said kind of beaten to their own drum here. I don't see Isaiah Hodgins and Paris Campbell go that high. That's pretty high for them. So, maybe he's from New York. Maybe he just kind of believes in them and knows something about it. But like you don't really see Hodgins and Campbell, both Giants, going there at the 10-11 area.
Yeah, that's a little bit, off from, their ADP, and it could just be someone that's, they're just getting their feet wet in the OCs, and
Yeah, that's true.
Starting to draft and getting a feel for ADP. But, as they get more comfortable, they'll realize like, hey, I could have waited a couple of rounds and gotten both guys pretty comfortably.
All right, so I'm about to be on the clock here. By the way, that team that started off with the Kelsey stack, they hit the wide receivers pretty hard, so that's good. At least they're either they know what they're doing or listen to the stream. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they do know what they're doing. In fact, I've seen that name before. He does know what he's doing. Let's see here.
Yeah,
I'm on the clock.
He definitely needed to do that with those receivers. But I'll let you think here and concentrate on what you want to do here.
All right. I do know you have two picks before me, so I need to be before my pick after this, so I do need to be mindful of that in terms of you.
All right, who am I going to take?
Somebody.
Yeah, who am I taking, man?
I know what I want, and I know it might be a little early, but his min is higher than this, and I'm just going to do it. And I'm sorry, you weren't thinking about Chase Brown, were you?
Yeah, he was in consideration. Yep.
Yeah, I feel like my my running backs are a little light. I'm not a big Mixon guy this year, and then you've got Travion Williams hurt there. I think the rookie can really kind of get pretty heavily involved in that offense. And if something does happen to Mixon, whether on the field or very possible off the field, as we know a lot about Joe Mixon in that realm.
And as you know, like Chase Brown is a favorite of mine. I was definitely high on him coming out of the draft.
And I know, and I saw a tweet of yours today, and that's what got me. So I've been into Chase Brown, but never this high. And I realized also, and these are some of the things you kind of psych yourself out and push players up. You're like, well, shit, if I really want Chase Brown and it kind of fits my build here, he may not get past Nelson. So I better take him here. So that's why I did it. All right, you've got a couple of picks coming up here, and you get to stick around for a couple more rounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. We'll go 10 after the hour, so we'll go through the end.
Is there any questions in the chat?
I've been popping them in. Let's see. Jay asks about running back splits. I was kind of with our Penny conversation, but is it a viable? We kind of talked about it, right? I guess it depends on the team and the running backs.
It depends on the running backs, because that's the thing. Like in today's NFL, most teams are going with a split, right? And there's only a handful of running backs that you can say, like, hey, they're the bell cow for their offense. If you're not getting, two of those in the first couple of rounds, then you should.
Oh, and you're up, by the way.
Okay. And then you shouldn't be taking those running backs. Mm-hmm. You should be going wide receiver or grab an edge at QB, something like that.
Yep, makes sense.
All right, let's see here.
an interesting phenomenon here. I don't call it phenomenon, but just in NFFCs, you usually, those a lot of these stud quarterbacks, like I mean, I don't want to call them stud, but like the sort of the second, third tier of guys, the established names, the guys that can average 22, 25 fantasy points per game. These Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilsons, Geno Smiths of the world, they fall. Most of the time, everyone has their set quarterback. They don't usually rush into getting a second one. There are usually even reasonable QB2s available, like literally in your last 3 picks of the draft. So there's just something very unique to the NFFC format. So, all right. So it's Spears and Shark for you, I see. Shark.
Yep.
I don't really know much about. I mean, I know a little bit about Tajai Spears. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Kind of analyst am I? So I know enough about him, but I don't really have a set opinion on him.
Pretty talented kid coming out of college. Has a little bit of like a knee issue with like cartilage, missing cartilage and stuff like that. But like that might hurt him in the long run, but not for this year. And Derrick Henry he's getting up there in touches and age. And if something ever happened to him, you got Haskins, who's been, he got in trouble with the law and everything. So who knows with him? So I want to have a little bit of spares, and that's it, these rounds. That's what you're looking to do, right? You're looking to take these like handcuff type of running backs that, don't have a clear role, but if an injury we're not wishing on injuries, but if an injury happens, it's the NFL to the starter, then you potentially have like that type of like, home run type of pick.
Yeah, I remember I had been a couple of years there, or that one year, just like so big on Donta Foreman, just in case, because I was just always a fan of his. I always felt like he was underrated, and he even paid off last year. But there was a time where he was, I think, towards the end of a season, like coming off his suspension or whatever it was, or injury, he was Derrick Henry's backup. And it was like the fantasy playoffs. And it's like, if something happens to Henry, man, he's just like lined up to explode. So you never know. So, hey, look, I ended up getting my pairing, and maybe an even better one, right? Yeah. I mean, there was that little period, I think middle of the season. It was like a 4-game stretch where just like Cole Kmet was leading the NFL in touchdowns. So maybe that's even a better pairing than Mooney. We'll see.
Yeah. And there's another guy that, I don't know how many wide receivers you like to take on your teams and stuff, but there's another guy that you can take pretty super late in the draft to have a little cheap stack.
And I know who you're talking about, but can I get back into him? He kind of feels like a little bit of like a kind of diva head case just from his time in Pittsburgh. If we're talking about Claypool here, like, I don't know, man. I just there's some people I just kind of cross off, maybe for not good reason, but
all reports that I've seen, he's having a great camp, and if you look at it, look at it this way, DJ and Mooney are smallish, 5'10" type receivers. And he's kind of like that big guy that could be like that red zone presence. So, and if, people are high on Fields, as am I. And I think this offense can like take another step forward. And if they do, and they start scoring a few more touchdowns and they throw the ball a little bit more and they're a little more efficient, who's to say that he couldn't come out of the blue? Like, there's always these receivers that fly totally under the radar. And then like after week 1, you're like, what? How did I not figure that? What, of course he's the starter and the red zone, target monster.
Yeah, that makes sense. By the way, anyone, if you are still around, still in the chat, you do have a question for Nelson, for myself, please go ahead and shoot it out here and we will answer it live on the air. So yeah, we're going to get through let's get through the end of 15. So a couple more rounds and then we will call it a show. I kind of like my team. I didn't know, when you're live drafting, you're talking, you're analyzing on the spot. Sometimes especially when a draft is moving as fast as this one is, it feels like sometimes you make bad decisions, but I don't mind. I kind of I'm okay with my team. I think there's some health risks there, but I think overall talent wise and kind of roster construction, I dig it. What do you think?
So
You keep it real.
I'm listen. I'm always critical, and it's funny because Maddie and I were talking about this, and anyone that's close to me and it asks that's friends with me and asks fantasy advice and in my opinion, I always say that I'm gonna be critical because you're asking me, so I'm gonna be true. And if I was quiet, that means I don't care.
Yeah.
So if I'm not answering you or whatever, that means I don't give a shit what happens to your team. So if I'm saying something and it's constructive criticism, take it as I care,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what it is. I'm not trying to, shit on anybody. I'm trying to, I'm trying to help. I'm trying to give my best, thoughts and opinion. For me, when I look at a team and, you know, you have a potential edge at QB and you have the wide receivers, that group of wide receivers. And as you know, I like playing wide receiver in the flex. I
Mm-hmm.
very rarely do I want to go into the season counting on a running back in the flex. So I'm looking for that full-time wide receiver type explosive. You have that. So and then another thing that people make the mistake of is who's that number 5 wide receiver? Because there's going to be injuries, there's bye weeks, okay, and just playing matchups. So
Mm-hmm.
you need that number 5 can't just be a total punt type of guy. You're gonna play him, and he's gonna play a key role, on your roster. So I like that you have Zay Flowers as your number 5 guy. Shit, some of my teams, he's in the lineup. He's not my number 5. I'm counting on him. So when I see that, and then it's okay, the question mark is your RB2. All day long, I'll go, the tight end I think will be okay. I think you'll be fine. But all day long, if I can go into the season and my question mark's my RB2, I'll figure it out.
Well, what if I told you I'm about to answer the question? What about this? Have you seen this before?
There you go.
It's crazy. It's crazy, but it's been complete the trifecta.
Listen, those guys that you took have upside in Swift and Penny, but they're, listen, anyone that plays in the NFL is injury prone, but they're more so than the average guy. Okay. They're always hurt. So I like that, being able to kind of handcuff that whole backfield, because it's the right type of backfield to handcuff. Because if something happens to Swift, Gainwell is now the pass catching running back, right?
Yeah.
So I do like that.
And then when something happens to Penny, then
yeah.
you got So I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to hold. Obviously, the smart thing to do is hold them all if they're healthy all season. I don't think you really mess with it because then you're just kind of playing with fire. But yeah, I mean, this gives me a little bit more. It's not something you ever really see. It's just kind of the way it just kind of manifested. But I just feel more comfortable, I guess, about my team now that I kind of locked up that third piece. Because if he ends up being the guy, I don't think he'll be the guy. But if he just if one of the other two get hurt, I'm okay with that because I'm covered. I don't care if I kind of threw away an earlier round pick.
Yeah.
All right, you're on for 2.
So my decision here is I want to take the Cowboys defense, but I feel having the Cowboys stack, it could work. They score a ton of points and the defense, in the second half, is just pinning their ears back and getting after that, their opponent. So I'm gonna go Cowboys defense here, and then let me see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's time for me to be look. I may not take one this round, but I need to start kind of shopping around and just kind of reminding myself of who is playing who, because I think also the week one matchup matters, because that keeps you from having to get a second or wasting a second pick on a defense. If like, they're just some good defenses that have a tough week one matchup that won't necessarily help you optimize fantasy points for the week. So they're going quick. Bills are now off the board. Let's see. Jets, Ravens, Jags, Dolphins are the next few up. Jets get the Bills. Jags get Indy. That's obviously a good spot. That's a Modica special. Sorry to out you, but Matt Modica likes the Jaguars. And let me remind myself, Baltimore. Oh, they got Houston in the first one. They got Houston, then Cincy. That's not an ideal matchup. Then they get Indy, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Tennessee. I like that. So if you can get around
Ravens
week
and Jaguars.
2. Yeah. And then just to refresh myself, Jags get Indy, then KC. You got to sit them there. Then you can play them against Houston. Atlanta's dicey, Buffalo's dicey, then Indy's good again. So yeah, I guess I love both defenses, but I do kind of trust and like Baltimore's a little bit more. Man, there's still some good wideouts on the board, but it's kind of nice to lock in a defense. So let's do it. Ravens it is. Cool. Yeah, this is fun. By the way, anyone that is new or has never heard of FTN or aren't subscribing, ftnfantasy.com, and we have a thing that is the high stakes package, and that is basically you get into Nelson's brain for the entire season. So especially if you're in mid to high stakes type leagues, if you're NFFC, any other type of sort of national contest, highly advised that you get it. FTN wins is the promo code to get 10% off the package. It's $199, but well worth the money, especially kind of full access to Nelson in our Discord channel. You get his fade list, which is a very valuable resource over the years, something that I specifically use. Me personally, very few fantasy analysts. There are a lot of great ones out there. There are only very few that I trust, and Nelson is at the top of the list. So ftnfantasy.com, get that high stakes package. If you don't want to spring for that, then our base package is $99.99, and an FTN wins is a promo code for that as well. So go ahead and check us out. Anything else? Any let's like kind of final thoughts of what we're looking at this board?
No, this was a fun draft, and I actually enjoyed this, where we're actually going up against each other in a draft, and hopefully, people that listened in were able to kind of see how our thought process goes into building a team. Because I say that all the time. Like for me, team construction is a big thing. Don't go into a draft. A lot of people do. They just go into a draft and it's like, I'm just going to pick players. And it's like, you really have to know, like, it's not as complex as baseball, but, it's still, you have to know like how to navigate and how to build a team and find like those like sweet spots in the draft and for what position that you can target, and analyzing draft boards, like taking a look at those things, developing kind of like tiers for each position, I think is kind of the way to draft, not so much like have like overall rankings. I don't think that's the way to go. I think you should break them down by position and then just have like a tier break off, and then see what makes sense for your team. Like, don't just go in blindly and like, oh, my overall ranking says I should take a fourth running back. Well, like, what are you going to do with that fourth running back? You can't even start him, and you're taking them in like the first 6-7 rounds. It's like a waste. So you gotta, it's the thought process, right? It going through and understanding like what you're trying to do.
By the way, this is like, I sent you a message, private message, but this is like so I'll just ask you on the air straight up, like, should we just finish this thing out? Because this is the fastest moving draft I've ever seen. Are you good with that?
Totally fine with it. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, these things go like 2 hours, 20 minutes. I feel like we'd be shortchanging folks here, if we like, kind of don't show these last few rounds, might as well finish out the draft since we're here. And I mean, it's going really, really fast. So I know you're 3 hours ahead. So just want to make sure. All right. So I like the way things are going here. And it's fun to talk through the draft as well as we go. Donovan Peoples-Jones is somebody that I like. I mean, what percentage chance would you give of Donovan Peoples-Jones outperforming Elijah Moore this season?
Could it
30,
happen?
60.
Maybe, but I gotta be honest, I'm pretty high on Elijah this year. So I'm gonna say that would be very bad for me if he does.
What was the real issue with him last year? I know a lot of it was documented, but like, that game was like, I mean, I don't know what the hell happened last year with him and management
So,
and usage.
yeah. So basically what ended up happening was that he was getting used, but then Zach Wilson developed the yips. Okay. And I'm trying to think, was it like Chuck Knobloch in baseball that like
Yes, that was him.
it was him, right?
Yeah.
So the same thing happened with Wilson, where like he could not like they would run like kind of like a screenplay, and he couldn't complete like a simple pass. Like he was having trouble with it,
Mm-hmm.
and basically like Moore just said, "You fucking suck."
Yeah.
And the coaches like kind of like went into him, and he just was frustrated because like you saw like he would get like there was like a couple of games where he got like 1 target, 0 targets, like wasn't even used, and he's like, that's what happened. Like he was at practice and he's like, "You fucking suck, bro,"
Mm-hmm.
and that was it. That was the end of that. Like they just soured on him real quick.
Okay, so
But
this
then
is
they go out and get Aaron Rodgers, which basically proves Elijah Moore was, accurate in
uh-huh.
what he was saying.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Man, I'm in a pickle. All right, I'll just take Purdy.
Oh, you fucker!
Sorry. So
That's who I wanted.
I had a thought in mind here. Because I had Cooper Cup, I was thinking, and then I like Van Jefferson too. I think he's kind of kind of underrated in fantasy. I'm in basketballs. I'm taking him in like the 130s, and even though his ADP is like 150.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Stafford, but like, can I really take Stafford when Brock Purdy's still on the board? I don't know if I can. Just these guys are going two different trajectories in their career. So instead of trying to get cute with a stack, I figured Purdy was a better pick.
Yeah, no, that's a good pick. Oh, I'm not going to own Evan Hull in this draft, and I want to say that might be the first time in like the last 10 drafts
Mm-hmm. That you don't have him.
that I won't have him. Yeah, I've had like 10 consecutive drafts where I've gotten Hull.
I don't know much about him. All I know is I mean, obviously, they just signed Kenyon Drake. So he's going to be mixing in there, trying to steal some work, obviously.
Yeah,
Not the same guy he used to
that's
be.
like pretty much saying like,
Yeah, I know.
they
Marlon
signed,
Mack.
like, yeah. I mean,
I've got a sneaky running back later that I'll bust out.
yeah, Kenyon Drake. Jeez, that's like people reacting positively to Marlon Mack signing with Arizona. Like,
Yeah, is that where he signed? Okay,
give me a
interesting.
yeah, he signed there, and I saw a couple of tweets out there about Mack, and I'm like, oh my god, like, really, we're getting excited about Marlon Mack. All right.
Well, that was me this time last year, and I've learned my lesson, so I'm not going to get stubborn about it. Especially our colleague and basically the main guy over at FTN. He's got his radio show on SiriusXM. Jeff Ratcliffe has been kind of like the anti Marlon Mack guy for so many years. It's really funny. It's like a shtick. But yeah, I'm fine. I mean, you learn lessons every season. Even if you played fantasy for 25 years, like you just have certain like bad habits all the time. There's certain, profiles, certain type of players you love. And I'm trying to get better. Especially I'm playing, the high stakes leagues. You can't get stubborn with these things. You got to kind of know when to get out on things. All right. So I'm looking at, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could use one or two more receivers. Could
I
definitely
usually
use
like to have seven.
yeah, I'm usually at
What do
7 or
you,
8.
what do you, seven, right? You're a seven kind of guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 7. 1, 2, 3. I have 5 running backs, but 3 of them are, you know, Philly guys. Oh wait, oh shit, I'm on the clock. I'm about to.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Good time.
Shakir is one of my best ball must-haves, or at least he was when I wrote that article up about 3 weeks ago. So I got my 2 quarterbacks. Not doing a kicker yet. I got my defense. I'll worry about week 2 later. Not going to take another tight end, at least not now. So I'm at wide receiver or running back. Running backs are running really thin. Um, and I have one. I have a couple that I like that I'm okay with later. 16 seconds. So I guess I'll just settle on the whiteout, and I'll take a boring guy here. Maybe he just ends up being the number one MVS.
Okay. He's that type of guy that during the season play matchups. You got Rice. Um, it's a good offense to speculate on, right? You take a couple of those guys and just see if anything, it's like shaking a tree, see if anything
Yeah.
falls.
And especially because MVS, I think he had a lot of kind of hype going into the season, and he was kind of going around the 80, 100 overall area, both like in best balls and NFFC and everywhere else. And then he just never like materialized, right? Like he just was never like uh, he didn't live up to the hype, so to speak, especially like within that offense.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just a year delayed, right? I mean, never know. And but with all those guys there, man, it's so tough. The one guy actually we didn't talk about or mention was, and I'm curious, Richie James, because he was pretty solid last year for the Giants. There, working out of the slot. He was a good cheap DFS guy. Our guy Sam Chowdhury made a lot of money on Richie James. Any thoughts on him sticking around there?
Like I said, I think outside
Committee.
of a couple of guys, it's a committee.
Mm-hmm.
I think every week, like they have depth. Like they don't have superstars. They don't have like these like stud, Tyreek, Devontae Adams types, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they have depth and they have speed, and it's just every week it's going to be a new guy. And Mahomes even talked about it last year. They had Juju, they had MVS that they signed, and people were asking, and he's like, sorry, fantasy owners, but like it's just going to be a committee basically, and that's just going to be the same thing this year.
Todd asked that question there. Bashan Robinson's number 2 as his min. Is that really crazy and high stakes? Seem kind of risky on a running back. Well, it's not risky on a running back because a lot of times, you get the top 3 running back, you take them in the first round, you've earned value basically on it. You're getting your 20, 24 fantasy points a game, production, just somebody that's carrying you every week. But Jean can be one of those guys. I don't think it's that crazy, right? Number 2 overall.
So last Friday, I set that min pick. I
Ah,
took Robinson at 1.2, and it's to me it's not crazy because I believe, in my opinion, that he's a generational talent, and I think that the Falcons, despite what we think of Arthur Smith and everything, I think that the Falcons took him with exactly a mindset of how they're going to use him, and he's an excellent receiver out of the backfield. So I think that some people are predicting that he could bust, but like I think he's bust proof. So
mhm.
is he going to have the type of like crazy year that like he's deserving of the number 2 pick? The odds are a little bit against him, but I think he's like LaDainian Tomlinson slash Saquon. Like I
Wow.
think he's that type of talent. And at the end of the day, it comes down to the offensive coordinator, in being able to utilize his talents. I think that the offense that he's going into, they have a decent run, average offensive line, but they've got Drake London and Kyle Pitts, so like they have two like supremely talented pass catchers, and if Desmond Ritter can just be like just solid, and that's a lot to ask for Desmond Ritter to be just solid. But like if he is, the stars could align where Bijan is the number one back in fantasy. So that's my opinion of that pick.
Okay, so I'm about to make I want to ask you a follow-up question to that after I make my pick. I'm going to make a pick, my first one that I think you're not going to like. Maybe I'm wrong here.
Okay.
But it's just somebody I've just going against what I had just said about like just kind of being off guys, like knowing when to bounce off of them, like, with a Marlon Mack that just never goes away. This is what I'm doing right here. And I just want to get a running back. I don't feel a lot of comfort here, but nice little quote there. I do think he is going to be playing a lot as long as he's healthy. I don't know if he's any good anymore, but I think Chase Edmonds is going to play in Tampa. And there's a nice quote on him today.
Okay. I listen, every year is a new year. But I will say that I was on him last year, and from what I saw, I was proven wrong that I just don't think that like what we saw with him in the Cardinals, it looked like, man, if he ever got an opportunity to like just carry the load, like he could be really good. I just don't think he's like that guy anymore.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I don't think either, but yeah, maybe something in this offense is like my RB6.
But I mean, there's really no, like it's Keyshawn Vaughn and you've got an
Tucker.
Unproven Rashad White. So like those would be like kind of like the positive. Like White, the thing is he's not unproven in the passing game, and that's where kind of Edmonds would excel.
Yeah.
So it could get something and have it work out. All right, I'm on.
All right, you got your 18th, 19th picks here. We haven't talked about your picks in a while. You got your backup to Dak Prescott and Derek Carr. I think that's a really nice and solid pick. By the way, when Prescott has his bye week, which will be in week 7, Carr gets Jacksonville. That should be a fun little shootout. So if you still have Carr on your team at that point and get bored of him and find someone better, then that will be who you go with. I like those, man. See, you're the running back master. That's one of the things I always pay attention to is what somebody does with the running backs what you do specifically with backup running backs with your last 2 picks. Kyron Williams is kind of getting in the same conversation with Cam Akers, which is kind of shocking, but and you know the Rams.
I do know the Rams, and I had a little bit of a connection last year with the Rams, and I know that McVay and like that coaching staff, they love Kyron Williams, and they feel like he can be really good in how they want to use him. It's unfortunate because he was actually going, like the plan was that he was going to be involved like early and often to start the year, and you saw in that Thursday night game, like he went to return a kick return or a punt and had a ankle sprain, high ankle sprain, and like that was pretty much like he was kind of done. That was his season. So I think if that returns and he comes into camp and does a good job this preseason, I think people are going to be a little bit surprised where he's going to be like the passing down back.
Yep.
Right? A lot of people think like maybe Akers could take on like that bell cow type of role, but I always in the back of my mind remember like the conversation from last year, and it's like, you know what if like this is like Kyron's year, like these guys go like right back to him.
All right. I'm gonna just take another flyer. These tight ends are gonna be a dime a dozen. I'm not gonna take one, so I'll just get another. I'll get that. Yeah, it's the what just in case. The just in case. I
like that better than Kenyon Drake.
Yes, I think so. I think so. I think I like that. I know he hasn't been drafted yet. I don't want to screw things up in the draft, but like the one guy that I've been drafting in a ton of my best balls, I wrote him up last month. I even took him in at NFFC with the last round pick, and I know he's kind of behind on the depth chart, but it was
Yeah.
nice to see him actually score in the Hall of Fame game. But Izzy Abinaconda, I
Uh-huh.
like this guy, and if Bryce Hill ain't ready, man, Michael Carter really is not somebody I'm worried about there. He could be something this year. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, if they were willing to like host Dalvin Cook and bring him in and have some type of interest in him, um, I just wonder, like, what does that mean? Like, are they trying to? I believe that is the case, that they're trying to bring Brees Hall along slowly to
Hmm.
start the year, and I think they were probably upfront and honest with Dalvin of like how they envisioned the role, and he probably didn't like it,
Yep.
because a guy like Dalvin, he wants to sign with a team. The money's got to be right, but at the same time, like he wants to get carries. He doesn't want to be like somebody's like water boy. So I think the coaches, are saying, hey, Brees is kind of is the guy, but like we're gonna bring him along slowly, and you can be a big part of the team. And he's like, nah, not feeling it. So I think what you're gonna see is a lot of these veteran running backs are gonna wait, let the preseason play out, let training camp play out, and you have a couple of guys get banged up, and now they're getting phone calls,
Hmm.
and now they're more of a priority.
I do have one question. We were talking about Bijan Robinson earlier, and I think it's important to ask this because we sometimes, I feel, get jaded by being like multi-entry guys where we do so many drafts, we kind of sometimes forget that sometimes people just kind of have their home league or their one expensive league or whatever.
Yeah.
What is there any chance you would take Bijan Robinson if you only had one prime time? Would you take him second overall, or is just not a consideration if you only had one draft?
I'm taking Jefferson one overall, and then it's between him, Chase, and Tyreek.
Okay,
Like,
okay,
like
that's fair.
that's that's my top four. So if I've got a top four pick and I've got one draft to do,
Hmm.
I'm taking one of those four guys.
Love it. I love it. And he is your RB1 if I am, I mean, obviously at this point.
He's my RB1 in my rankings.
Yeah.
So, and I told Greg, I kind of gave him a heads up of what I was going to do, and I could have taken Chase there, I could have taken Tyreek, but I wanted to just kind of like it was like a little bit of like a statement to say like, hey, like these are my rankings, and I draft off of my rankings. So
Hmm.
if I'm gonna put them as like number one, it's not because I'm trying to get clicks or
Yeah, of
anything like
course.
that, or
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying. Like I'm not trying to get a reaction out of people. Like that's what I believe, and I'll draft it that way.
Hmm. So a little bummed that, I mean, hey, here we are talking about team kickers, but Atlanta's kicker, man, because I kind of really like that schedule. I like his leg. I know he was off a little bit last year, but like Carolina, Green Bay, Detroit, Jacksonville, Houston to start. I do like Atlanta team kicker, but I still got plenty of good ones to choose from here. Dallas, Seattle, Philly, San Francisco. Let's just click on one. Dallas, Philly. Who's the Dallas kicker right now? It's not Mayer, obviously.
Uh, no, I'll tell you right now. Hold on, Tristan Vizcaino.
Oh yeah, Tristan Vizcaino is like a former Tampa. Ah man, I don't know if I love that. Let's go. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I can pick up another kicker. Let's go. Who does?
The beauty of it is
It
that
doesn't
it
matter.
doesn't matter who the kicker is because it's team kicker. But obviously, you want the guy to not be shitty and
Yeah,
shanking field goals. So
yeah. It's actually I've actually been pretty good. I do spend the time because it's fantasy points, right? You still want preferably someone in a dome. with a good, percentage, completed and not in cold weather. And also the Vegas spreads need to kind of work out. You don't want somebody, on a heavy underdog because they're not going to be kicking a lot. So I think the kickers do matter a little bit. So yeah, anyways, hey, there we are. Draft is done. Happy with your team overall, Nelson?
So we're going into hour and 45 minutes, and let's talk for just like 30 seconds on kicker strategy. Okay. Because I've actually through the years, I've had this asked, from subscribers. And listen, we're talking about kickers here. So, to not get too carried away here, I'll keep it short. What I will say is my kicker strategy is, like Vlad said, he said it perfectly. Preferably in a dome, warm weather. I don't care about cold weather kickers on elite offenses. So like Butker, Kansas City kicker, Buffalo kicker. I don't worry about to start the year. Okay. Now, Buffalo kicker, like towards when we get into winter, you're dealing with the crazy snowstorms and the wind, and they're not playable. The other thing I look for in a kicker is the offense that they're in. I either, if you're streaming kickers like week to week basis, I want a kicker that is going to be it's a high total, and like the line, the spread is not more than 3 or 4 points. Anything past that, you don't want to be taking a kicker on the underdog, because the thought behind it is they're going to be trailing and they're going to be foregoing field goal tries because they're trying to get touchdowns. So that's my strategy when it comes to kicker.
Yeah, exactly. You said it perfectly, and really it matters because that's the edge. I mean, at the end of the day, like to get into the NFFC playoffs, if you're there, those few extra points, they matter. Every point matters. You got to squeeze them out at every position. And it is one of the positions, right? So even though you're getting sort of less points per game out of it than your wide receiver 2 or whatever, it still does matter. So that was awesome, man. That was a lot of fun. We could do it again. Nice room here too. Nice group of people in this draft. And fantastic. So any last words to our people here? When are we going to see you next?
We'll probably actually Kevin and I are doing a live stream Tuesday night.
Okay. Oh, you and Kevin Adams?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. All right. Okay. Yeah. Excellent.
He's getting into the redraft streets.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah. Excellent. That's our CEO, Kevin Adams. So we'll see you on the live stream on Tuesday. Thank you, everybody, very much for joining us. FTNFantasy.com. Sign up for the regular, or better yet, sign up for the high stakes package. You can use FTN wins, or you can ask around. There's, I think, some other promo codes around as well. So thank you, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.